Okay, good evening, everyone. It is Wednesday, Chaf Beis Shvat, the 22nd day of Shvat, and this week's Torah portion is Vayakel and Pikude. So we're going to take a little look at the portion and see what we can learn from this wonderful portion. It's quite interesting that the Parsha is called Vayakel, which means to gather. And Vayakel and Pekude are portions that talk about the importance of coming together in learning Torah. And I'm hearing an echo. It must be the giving of the Torah. So the Parsha is a Parsha of gathering, of togetherness. Vayakel Moshe, the Parsha begins. And Moshe gathered the people together. The purpose of this gathering was to teach the Jews the laws of Shabbos and then the laws of the building of the Mishkan. And the juxtaposition of these two topics, the Mishkan and Shabbos, is that we know how to keep Shabbos from the building of the Mishkan. The idea of resting on Shabbos, Hashem says, 6 days a week you shall work, and the seventh day you shall rest. Rest from what? What is it that we should rest from? Which actually lends itself to the question, what is it that we should be doing during the 6 work days? And the sages tell us that the work that was prohibited on Shabbos was any kind of work that was needed for the building of the tabernacle. And this teaches us what we are supposed to be doing during our 6 days of work. That and it means that we are here in this world with the business of building a tabernacle, building a sanctuary for God. And just as the specific sanctuary that the Jewish people, the temple that stood for many years in Yerushalayim, and before that the Mishkan, the tabernacle in the desert, was the place that Hashem was present in this world, so too we are in the business now of bringing that godliness and that revelation of Hashem in the world. And to that end, just as the Parsha describes, what should we bring to the table? What should we bring in order for that building to be complete? And the Torah describes all the different materials that were brought, and gold and silver and copper. And the Torah talks about the talents that people came with in order to build this tabernacle. And this is what we are supposed to also be doing. We're supposed to be bringing our talents and our goodwill into our everyday life to bring Hashem into our world. But the Torah tells us that when it came to the donations and when it came to the building of the Mishkan, of the tabernacle, that it was of utmost importance not only that one should bring their donations, but that actually it should be infused with enthusiasm, that there should be a love in the giving, there should be a passion in this giving. And that's how we're supposed to live our lives. We're supposed to live our lives with the fire and the enthusiasm of the realization that we are here because Hashem has chosen us to be here, to be the designers of his sanctuary, of his wonderful world. And I'd like to share a sikha, a discourse. This is what we usually do on Wednesday evenings. Usually we sit together with the copy, but I'll sit with the copy and read it for you. And we'll discuss this beautiful sikha which the Rebbetzin Rebbe gave over on this Parsha. So this sikha, this discourse, was given over when the Rebbe formally accepted the leadership of Lubavitch. And at that Farbrengen, at that discourse, the Rebbe spoke about his father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, Reb Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, and of his efforts to bring Mashiach, which were really to a degree of great self-sacrifice. By the time the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe arrived here on American shores, he was physically disabled. And what kept him, his drive for that Mesiras Nefesh, for that self-sacrifice, which not only did he have for himself, but he had an army of Hasidim who carried that torch with him, was the drive to bring Mashiach, which Mashiach is what it's all about. That's what the Beis HaMikdash is about. That's what the tabernacle was about revelation, the revelation of God in this physical world, which was the whole purpose and reason for the creation. At that time, the Rebbe talked about a Sefer Torah that the previous Rebbe had asked should be written. This was a Torah that was to be written to greet Mashiach's Torah. And he asked that money be collected from all over the world, that Jews should participate in the writing of this Torah. And the Rebbe asked, if the previous Rebbe who had such Mesiras Nefesh, such self-sacrifice, wanted that a Torah should be written to greet Mashiach, why did he ask that the Hasidim, that Jews should participate in the funds to pay for this Torah? And to answer that question, the Rebbe related that he spoke about this Parsha, how Hashem commanded Moses to build the sanctuary, to build the Mishkan, and the Torah refers to it as the sanctuary of Moses, but in essence, at the end of the day, Moshe Rabbeinu himself actually did not build this tabernacle. He did not build the Mishkan. He gave over the building of this Mishkan to Bnei Yisrael, to the Jewish people. So it was his mission, and he gave over the mission to the Jewish people. And he was a true leader in every sense of the word, and that's why the tabernacle was built to the exact specifications that Hashem had given to Moshe Rabbeinu, and the Jews were so enthusiastic in their donations that Moses had to say, stop, it's enough. You don't have to bring any more. So the Rebbe says the same is when the Frierdiker Rebbe wanted to have a Torah and he wanted to bring Mashiach. The Frierdiker Rebbe didn't want that this would be his mission that he would carry out on his own, but rather what he wanted was that it should be a shared mission. Should be something just like this Parsha. The Parsha is called Vayakel. to build the tabernacle, Moshe Rabbeinu first brought everybody together, so that together we all would be participating and all have the privilege in this mission, which was given to Moshe Rabbeinu, which he successfully included the rest of Bnei Israel, the rest of the Jews, in that mission. And this really is the function of a leader. A leader is there to pass along his vision to the people. And that's not a simple thing, because a tzaddik, a righteous person, has the ability to be able to give over a vision that they have with their depth, but yet to bring it down to a level of the kahal, of the entire community, so that every single person, from those with the greatest understanding to those with lesser understanding, would all equally participate in the building of this tabernacle, of the holy Beis Hamikdash, of the holy temple. So that's the mission. The mission that we still have today is the mitzvah given in the Torah, V'asu li mikdash, you shall make for me a sanctuary, v'shachanti b'socham, and I will dwell in that sanctuary. We continue to do this task of bringing HaKadosh Baruch Hu, of bringing God's light and revealing the presence of Hashem in the sanctuary of this world. So we needed the Moshe Rabbeinu, we needed the Moses, because Moses was the one who was able to visualize exactly what needed to be done. Why the Moshe Rabbeinu? Because Moshe Rabbeinu is the one that had spent 3 periods of 40 days each in Shamayim, in the heaven. He's gone up to God and gone to bring the Torah down to Bnei Israel and down to the world. And he established a relationship with Hashem unlike any other person that ever lived on the face of the earth. And as a leader of the nation, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses, wanted to be able to impart and to enable every single Jew to be able to have such a relationship as he had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, with God. And in this way, we would become one with Hashem and have a closeness to God, and to be able to appreciate the results of our efforts in bringing godliness into this world. So the Torah talks about the fact that that people came with gold and silver and copper and all sorts of precious gems, and brought this to the sanctuary, brought this to the building of the Beis Hamikdash. Not only did they bring it, but they brought it with an inspired heart. Now, this morning, I shared in the Parsha class a beautiful poem on the second portion of this week, which is Pekudei. And so now, as we're talking on the topic of Vayakel, and the Parsha talks about how every person came with an inspired heart, I'm going to share with you also this very, very beautiful poem from Chani on the Parsha poems. Beautiful poem. So here we go. So the pasuk that we're quoting and the poem is based on is, "And every wise-hearted person among you shall come and make everything that the Lord has commanded. The brain is working overtime. It hasn't slept a wink. It can program. It can calculate before you even blink. It hypothesizes what will be. The world, it speculates, the function of 1 million cells it alone can orchestrate. But the nerves that reach down to the heart, they were never trained, and all those complex instructions in the brain, they do remain. Because if the wires aren't connected and the brain remains elite, the mind can be so brilliant, but the heart has ceased to beat. Between the walls of any classroom, the same disease can spread, where the mind is stimulated and it's racing far ahead. When we learn a wealth of information, academically we fly, but our heart can miss the classes while our grades are just as high. Why leave our learning one-dimensional when it should be alive? Can't we leave class with a passion, with a motive, with a drive? A class should have a heartbeat. It should generate a feel. Why trust learning to the textbooks when it could be something real? In the building of God's temple, we could each give a donation: gold, silver, copper, the gifts poured in from the nation. But God had a requirement. If you want to have a part in building God a home on earth, you must be wise of heart. Not wise of mind or kind of heart. You heard the words correct. Wise of heart means synchrony, a system that is perfect, where wisdom's flowing through the nerves, the heart it does inspire, and the passion that it stimulates gives your learning its own fire. The mind's brilliance alone is deep, but it's dead and disconnected. The heart's passion may be alive, but on its own, it's not directed. Yet the marriage where the mind directs all that the heart contains means we've finally touched upon the purpose of our brains. I was wondering. Our intelligent understanding must affect our world's perception, bear a tangible improvement in our daily interactions. On how much we blush at an offense, how red we flush with rage. It refines us from the inside. The more our mind and heart engage. Learn about the lofty worlds, a higher outlook to attain. Discuss ideals, debate them till their values we ingrain. Explore God's greatness so our love for Him grows strong. We build a home for God within us when our heart plays the mind's song. Very beautiful and very instructional, that all of our learning needs to translate into action, and that action needs to be passionate, and it needs to be passionate and passionately driven in the right direction. That's why it's so important that the mind rules the heart. We see how we need both of these aspects, both the mind and the heart. Another interesting point in the Parsha is when Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moses talks to the Jewish people about working 6 days a week, work shall be done. And on the seventh day is a day of rest. It's very important for us to realize that we have a mandate from Hashem. And that is, if we are in this world, we've been given capabilities to work, and that's what we're supposed to do. What happens sometimes, though, is that we mistakenly think that if we work, we certainly will meet with success. The way the Torah expresses the idea of working, it's really an expression of work, but in more of a passive way. Work shall be done. What does that mean? That means that we have to do our job of working, because Hashem said that is the avenue, that is the vessel by which you create the blessing to be able to come into. The blessing has to come into something. We see actually at the end of the building of the tabernacle, what was the bracha? The bracha was given that the Shekhinah, may God's presence rest on the work of your hands. So more often than not, we take it for granted that if we're going to put effort into something, then surely we will be successful. So if 6 days a week we check in, we punch in at the office, then we'll make a living. And the lazy bum that doesn't check in on time won't make a living. If I go to school and I work hard on getting my degree and mortgage my soul, then I'll be successful. The Parsha is teaching us that's very important for us to remember. Where does our success come from? Our success comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, from God. Just as the success in the building of the sanctuary comes from God, so too we have to remember that any work that we want to do will be successful because Hashem is going to fill that keli. He's going to fill that vessel that we create. So every day we go out into the world and we work. That's what Hashem wants us to do. It's important for us to remember, what are we doing? Why are we working? We're working to bring Hashem, to bring God into this world. Now, that means that wherever we find ourselves, there is going to be an opportunity to reveal godliness. And it's specifically in the physical world that this takes place, that this happens. This morning in the class, we spoke about one of the donations that was given to the building of the tabernacle were the mirrors, the copper mirrors of the Jewish women, and those copper mirrors, which at first Moses was not 100% sure whether he should accept them, because after all they were the epitome of vanity, and this is a temple where we want to bring out godliness and reveal godliness. How do the mirrors shine in? No pun intended, or maybe pun yes intended. So the message that Hashem gave to Moshe Rabbeinu was, these mirrors actually represent the precise meaning of the temple. This is exactly what should be used in the holy temple in the Beis Hamikdash. What did God say? God said, "V'asu li mikdash, you shall make for me a sanctuary, v'shachanti b'sochem, and I will dwell in it." We said that means the holy temple. It also means the world. God wanted to have a dwelling place in the physical world. And he wanted that he should be invited, should be made comfortable, should be revealed, should be able to be at home in this world, and even in the lowest parts of the world, the most physical parts of the world, which the mirrors represented. The mirrors are things that at first glance, again, pun not intended, but fits in pretty well. The mirrors were for objects of vanity. And that's why initially Moshe Rabbeinu thought, no, we shouldn't use these mirrors. But then Hashem said, what did the women do with these mirrors? What the women did with these mirrors were that they came to their husbands and they gave them faith. They gave them a reason to go on. They gave them the understanding that even though things are very dark now and very difficult, but it's from Hashem, it's from God. And ultimately God promised Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov that there would be a future, that the Jews would be given the Torah, and that we would be given Eretz Yisrael. And so the women said to their husbands who didn't want to bring children into the world, when we are going to be redeemed, they didn't say if we're going to be redeemed, they said when we are going to be redeemed, there is not going to be a continuation of the Jewish nation. It's up to us. We have the responsibility. And the Midrash tells us that they would take the mirrors and they would beautify themselves in the mirrors, and they would come out to their husbands who were working, and they would say to them, come look in the mirror. And they would make light-hearted conversation and say to their husband, who looks prettier, you or me? And in this way, they were able to seduce their husbands, and the whole next generation was the result of this interaction between the women and their husbands in the darkest of times in Mitzrayim. So now Hashem said to Moshe Rabbeinu, to Moses, these copper mirrors are dearer to me than all the other donations, because these copper mirrors are, yes, taking something of the lowest element and elevating it and revealing Hashem within that. And so the copper was used in the temple. It was used to build the copper basin that the Kohanim, that the priests would use every day before they would start their service. They had to wash their hands and feet. Now, we said previously that's very important, that whatever we do in life needs to be done with passion, and that every week we have a Parsha, a portion of Torah that is a guide for us. Maybe, and I mentioned this in this morning's class, maybe one of the things that we could bring into our daily life is the idea of purification of the hands. I don't need to tell anybody that hand washing is really on everybody's minds, and one of the beautiful WhatsApp messages that I've seen, as I'm sure many of you have seen, lots of messages going around. By the way, if there's any negativity on the message, just get rid of it right away. Only watch the positive ones. And of course, to take seriously the instructions of the healthcare officials. That's really, really important. That's the concept of 6 days a week you shall work. We need to do our part, because that's making a vessel for God's blessing. So what was the message that I received? The message was that as you are washing your hands, remember whose hands you are in. And it really ties in with the message of this week's Parsha, that we need to do our part, we need to do our work, because Hashem said we need to do our work, but it's not actually the work that is going to prevent the sickness. It's the Eibishter, it's HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But God himself said, or shamartem es nafshosechem, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take the precautions that you need to take. But you should remember that you are in the Eibishter's hands, that you're in God's hands. And therefore, when you're washing your hands, remember that. So might be something that we could think about, that just as in this week's Parsha, we see this great mitzvah of purification of the priest's hands and feet, that they would wash their hands and feet from this beautiful copper basin from the mirrors that the Jewish women donated. We should, in addition to paying extra attention to washing our hands with soap, if we're lucky enough to be able to find any, but also maybe to bring the spiritual washing, the elevation of the hands, that we take with this idea of v'shachanti b'socham, of bringing Hashem into our lives by sanctifying everything that we do. So just a few notes about the practical application of netilas yadayim, of the washing of our hands. When we go to sleep at night, our neshama, our soul, goes up to Shamayim, it goes up to heaven. And in the morning, when we get that soul back, we immediately say the Modeh Ani, we thank Hashem, which I think also is something perhaps we might say with a little more kavana, a little more intention, thanking Hashem for giving us back our soul and giving us the opportunity to once again work on His sanctuary, on this world, on making it a holier place. And with that Modeh Ani comes the realization what we're doing here. We thank Hashem, Shechazarta bi, that you have given to me nishmasi, my neshama, my soul. And we end the prayer by saying, Rabba emunasecha, great is your faithfulness. What is that faithfulness that we're talking about? We're talking about the faith that Hashem has in each and every single one of us. The fact that we're here in the world is God saying, I trust you. I need you. There is something that you can bring to the building of this sanctuary that nobody else in the world can bring. And just like the priests were given the commandment, you must wash your hands before serving Hashem, before doing the priestly blessings and the priestly service in the Beis Hamikdash, in the Holy Temple, so too, every morning when a Jew wakes up, that's one of the reasons that we're given for the washing of the hands. And if you want to see really exactly how this mitzvah should be done, if you go on to Chabad.org, or you can call me and I can help you with it. And we wash our hands and we say the bracha, Baruch atah Hashem, Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, where we are acknowledging that all blessing comes from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, comes from God. Asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. What's the greatest source of blessing? That you have given to us these commandments. You have given to us these mitzvahs. What is a mitzvah? A mitzvah is the ability to create this world as a sanctuary for God, to create this world as a dwelling place for Hashem. And we finish this particular bracha with the words Al Netilas Yadayim. Al Netilas Yadayim. On the bracha is on the elevation of the hands. We wash our hands, but the idea is that our hands, which represent the concept of avodah, the concept of work, that we're going out into the work. And even though we're doing mundane things, just like the rest of the world, we're eating and we're cooking and we're decorating and we're exercising. But at the end of the day, all of that is with the intention of bringing godliness, of revealing godliness in this world. Now, in the Parsha, when the Parsha describes all the donations that were given, Moshe, it tells us, Moshe Rabbeinu, Moses gives an exact account of how much silver and copper was donated. Why did he do that? He did that in case anybody would suspect that he took some for himself. That maybe he siphoned off a little silver or a little copper for himself. So what did he do? He gives an exact accounting, but it's interesting that he didn't do that for the gold. Why only for the silver and for the copper and not for the gold? So one of the explanations given, actually this is from my father of blessed memories, Divrei Torah, that he would send out to us every week. And the explanation given was that gold generally is given by people who are of greater wealth. And therefore, they were able to give with a more generous heart and not suspect Moshe Rabbeinu of taking any off for himself. Something important to learn from this, as remember, Torah is hora'ah, it's not history. Why did the Torah give us this important piece of information? And important it has to be if the Torah tells us. And it's to teach us about a concept, a very important concept in Judaism known as maras ayin. There is, in the Code of Jewish Law, a code of conduct that a Jew has to be very careful in all of their actions and not ever to do something that could cause another to suspect them of doing something that is not a mitzvah, that is the opposite of a mitzvah, that is sinful. And there are many reasons for this. One reason is that when somebody sees someone doing something that's not so correct, it could cause another person to say, oh, maybe that's not so bad, I'll do the same. It could bring about that another person thinks ill of another Jew, and that's not a good thing. So this concept of maras ayin we see in this Parsha. So just to give a couple of examples of how we could bring this way of life to our everyday living, one of the classic examples given is that somebody who is going into a place where non-kosher food is being served, particularly a restaurant in a very public place, and they have no intentions of eating anything that's not kosher, but they want to have a meeting over there. That would fall under this category of maras ayin, that one shouldn't do something like that. You know, in the world at large, people say, who cares what somebody else thinks, right? Let's give them something to talk about. But Hashem says, no, we don't want that people should gossip, talk lashon hara. That's a terrible thing. And we certainly don't want to give license for others to be lax in their relationship with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. This is one of the reasons why it's forbidden on Shabbos to hang laundry in a public place, even if the laundry was washed before Shabbos, and even if it's not a question of the prohibition of squeezing. So if the laundry is filled with water, then it's muksa for sure that we're not allowed to touch it. But it would be an issue of maras ayin, that somebody would come to think that the laundry had been washed on Shabbos, and that's a prohibition. So that's something also practical that we can take away from the portion of the week, from this week's Parsha. This Shabbos is also Chazak. We finish Parshas Pikudei. So we read two portions, Vayakel and Pikudei. And when we finish, we say Chazak, Chazak v'nis chazek. It's so ironic that specifically this Shabbos, the Shabbos where the sages tell us that this concept of Vayakel, of Moshe Rabbeinu gathering together the Jewish people, and this was the place where the idea and the halacha, the law, that on Shabbos Jews should come together to read the Torah, because as we heard in the poem, it's very, very important that knowledge and experiences don't remain up here in our brains, but rather that we unite these ideas with our hearts so that we become passionate about the action, which is really where it's all at. The most important thing in our relationship with life is the mitzvah, is the action. So there is no action without the Torah. The Torah is superior in that it should lead us to the action. So Moshe Rabbeinu, after following the sin of the golden calf, where the Jews had just stood at Mount Sinai, had heard the voice of Hashem, had experienced unbelievable miracles, and seen the splitting of the sea, witnessed all of their fellow Jews leaving Mitzrayim, millions of Jews from a nation that even one slave was known never to escape. And yet, we come to a point where not a short while later, we're worshipping Avodah Zarah, we're worshipping the golden calf. And so Moshe Rabbeinu said, we need to do something to bring about that this never should come, that a Jew should go more than 3 days without learning together with other Jews. And thus was instituted this concept of coming together to learn, to read the Torah. Incidentally, women are not obligated in the reading of the Torah. Many women take issue with that and have a problem with that. The truth of the matter is that it's not that women don't know how to read the Torah. It's not that women cannot comprehend the Torah. It's that where was the root and the source of this mitzvah to come and to read the Torah together in the shul? It was a result of the sin of the Egel Hazav, of the golden calf. And we know that women did not participate in this sin. It is for that reason that a woman does not need the mitzvah of coming to be part of a minyan. The minyan also is this idea, a minyan, a quorum of men, 10 men coming together, bring the Shekhinah, bring the revelation of the Shekhinah, of God's presence, of God's light. Why does that light need to be revealed? Because of the sin of the golden calf. Therefore, women are not given this obligation. That's just in a nutshell, this incidentally. So what I'm saying is that I find it rather ironic that it's this Parsha. The truth is, I shouldn't say it's ironic, because everything that happens is Hashgacha Pratis, it's divine providence. The Baal Shem Tov teaches us that God didn't just create the world and doesn't just continue to keep the world in existence, but that God is involved in every single detail in life. And therefore, whatever happens, whatever we see was tailor-made for us to see, whatever we experience was tailor-made for us to experience, for the purpose of helping us fulfill our mission in this world. So as I'm thinking about this concept and this idea, and I'm looking at the name of the Parsha, Vayakel, the portion of Vayakel, the portion of Pikude, where Hashem is telling Moshe Rabbeinu that in order for this project, for this vision that God has of dwelling in this world, we need to be together. And Moshe Rabbeinu himself is decreeing that in order for us to remain passionate and to translate all our Torah knowledge into action, we need to be together. We need to come together. We need to read the Torah together. On this Shabbos, this year, in 2020, Hashem is telling us something. The message is still the same. The message is Vayakel. The name of the Parsha is Vayakel. And the message of the Parsha is Vayakel. We need to be together. We still have this mitzvah to build a sanctuary. We still have the necessity to be joined together. And yet, Hashem says, you're going to have to figure another way of uniting, of being together, of bringing the brain and the message of the intellect to the passion of the heart while you're still in your own homes. What could that possibly mean? I'm thinking about it. I truly believe that every single person who has been either partially removed from the rest of society or completely removed from the rest of society, certainly at this point is not taking anybody for granted. Certainly realizing that the status quo, which perhaps one may have taken for granted, or even if we didn't take it for granted, but there is a newness about the appreciation. Would any of us have imagined a few weeks ago, as we were sitting in shul or sitting at a Purim Suda or enjoying a wedding, having friends over for Shabbos dinner, going out to the park with our children and friends, that we would be here this week in the kind of situation that we find ourselves today. I don't believe that there is a person out there who hasn't spent any amount of time contemplating what is this all about. Certainly, as Jews, we need to be asking ourselves, not why, because we can ask ourselves till we're silly or sillier, and we won't find the answer. That is for Hashem to know. What we have to ask ourselves is, what now? Where do I go from here? Why is this happening to me? Why am I living in this time, in this place, in this situation? What is supposed to be my response? And as Hasidim of the Rebbe, we are so fortunate that we have many horas, we have many directives from the Rebbe, from previous situations, from times of difficulty. We have many directives from our history, from going back to many different situations that have happened. And one thing is for sure, we know that when our togetherness is at stake, it's something that we really, really, really need to work on. So if we're thinking about the holiness that we need to bring to the world, the greatest holiness we can bring into this world is achdus, is togetherness. God is the most comfortable where there is unity. And the fact that this unity is not going to come as easily in a way on the one hand, because practically speaking, we're stuck in our own places. But on the other hand, perhaps if we jump on the opportunity and go with that feeling that we have in our hearts, where we feel that we don't take one another for granted, where we feel that we're missing one another, where we feel that we're missing the physical beauty of our synagogues and of our places that we come to gather and of our communal affairs. But what did we say earlier with the poem? We said that it's important for the head and for the heart to come together, that our head should rule over our heart. There's no use having this emotional feeling, these days of intense movement of our neshamas, of our souls, insofar as appreciating one another and wanting to be able to be there for one another, if we don't translate it into action. So let us take these days to reach out, to connect to one another in any way that we can, whether it's a phone call, whether it's a shopping for somebody that is unable to shop. Of course, we need to be very careful and make sure that if we are in any compromised situation, we don't go out there, but rather we reach out and ask for help ourselves, and to take this emotion and take it together with the knowledge of what Hashem wants for us and actually bring it down to a reality. In this way, what we do is we take the message of Vayakel, we take the message of gathering together and the message of Pekude, which we spoke about in this morning's class. Pekude is more the concept of the individual, each one bringing what we can to the table. So don't think about the things that you can't do. Think about the things that you can do. Think about what you bring to the table, because we are one big family and every single one of us counts. Every single one of us matters, and we should keep this appreciation of each other in our life, even as Emetz Hashem, please God, just as this came so quickly, in the blink of an eye, everything can look up. I know everybody has so many messages of doom and gloom, but we need to stay positive, because this is from Hashem, this is from God. And just as it has come and wreaked havoc the way that it has, in the blink of an eye, it can change. And the truth is, another observation that I was thinking about, also very interesting, is that this all really has come to a head for us in the month of Adar, in the month of the story of Purim. And I see a parallel to this that's going on in the story of Purim, because the whole story of Purim also, the Jews were feasting and happy and jolly in Persia, and then from one day to the next, all their security had been pulled out from underneath them. There weren't any major dramatic disasters. It all happened in a very subtle way, really, just as what is going on now, as this virus started in such a subtle way and ultimately has started to wear away at the very fabric of every area of society. And Bnei Yisrael, the Jewish people, under the leadership of Mordechai and of Esther, were able to see through this. Why? Because Esther reminded them, and Mordechai reminded them, this is from HaKadosh Baruch Hu, this is from God. So before we wash our hands, and before we self-quarantine, and before we do any of the measures that we need to do, because that's the work of our hands that God will bless. But before we do any of that, we need to remember whose hands we are in. And God can turn things around in the blink of an eye. I want to wish everybody a good Shabbos. It's Shabbos Mevorchin this week. I want to wish a very happy birthday to Levi Bida. It's his birthday tonight. I also want to wish a happy birthday to Rabbi Denberg, whose birthday was today. I want to wish a very happy birthday to Zalman Bukit, Rabbi Bukit, whose birthday is on Shabbos in Mitzvah Hashem. And again, there's not going to be a Farbrengen in Shul. Everybody is invited to the rabbi's Farbrengen in your own home. Treat yourself to something nice. And we should all connect and bless each other through Torah. There's no greater way of connecting than through Torah. I encourage everybody to visit Chabad.org. There is a special site for inspiration during these times. Please avail yourself of this. Avail yourself of your friends. Reach out and be there for one another and keep this love and this connection alive until the coming of Mashiach. It should be speedily in our days. Good Shabbos.
Non-stop learning over here.